Covering breaking news now, President Obama just spoke by phone with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, the first communication between the U.S. and Iranian leaders since 1979. President Obama says they've reached a, quote, comprehensive solution over Iran's nuclear program. That's the hope, anyway.
Now, we're mindful of all the challenges ahead. The very fact that this was the first communications between an American and Iranian president since 1979 underscores the deep mistrust between our countries, but it also indicates the prospect of moving beyond that difficult history.
I'm joined now by conservative radio host Mark Levin. He's the author of The Liberty Amendments, Restoring the American Republic, the author of the New York Times bestseller and host of the nationally syndicated Mark Levin Show. Mark, thanks so much for joining us. Obviously, we had this interview planned previously to talk about your book and to talk about the budget fight, but President Obama gave us some breaking news to talk about. What's your reaction to news of this phone call?
That's my reaction. What next?
Just,
the dictator
just for the transcript.
The dictator. Well, I'm sorry, but the dictator in North Korea going to call him next, and we'll sit down with them and so forth. The fact of the matter is, did not this moderate say that they're not changing policy with respect to their production of nuclear weapons? Didn't he say that? Well, so what are they talking about on the phone? I have no idea. I don't know what progress they're talking about. It's amazing to me. The irony is unbelievable. The president gets up there, he talks in very nice prose about, this is the first time we're having this discussion. This is a regime that hangs gay people. This is a regime that kills American soldiers. This is a regime, as I speak, that's torturing freedom fighters in that country. Meanwhile, he talks about the Republicans as if they're holding hostages. One of his flunkies was on your show yesterday talking about them having bombs attached to their chest, and I'm not going to talk to them. Now, the Iranians, sure, we're going to talk to them. This is a first. Boehner, no way I'm going to talk to them. Does he even understand how silly he looks?
Well, that was one of the things that I noted.
No, he doesn't.
That was one of the things I noted is that Republicans have been very critical of the fact that President Obama putting outstretched hands to talk with dictators, whether it's Bashar al-Assad or now Rouhani, whereas there's a very strong criticism he's not doing enough to negotiate with Congress. His position on the government shutdown is Congress cannot achieve unto itself, it doesn't have enough votes in the Senate to get rid of Obamacare, and therefore it's not fair nor democratic to try to force defunding of Obamacare through by threatening a government shutdown or by threatening not to raise the debt ceiling. Why is he wrong?
Oh, I see. So the only Congress that was Democratic was the one that passed Obamacare, so we're stuck with it forever. And I understand when he was a senator and he voted against increasing the debt ceiling, that was not going to throw the economy into hell. No. And now as President of the United States, he's talking about a government shutdown. We have to pay our bills. Does he even understand how this works? You're paying existing interest, principal, and pensions. Existing, not prospective. We've taken $200 billion a year. That covers all that and more. He doesn't want to negotiate because he doesn't want to talk about that. That's perfectly fine. Now, we've shut down the federal government 17 times in 19 years. I've got it right here. It's NBC, so it must be true. From 1976 to 1995. People got their checks. The military didn't go home. The border was as secure as it was then as it is now. So all these scare tactics mean nothing. And I just want to inform some of the folks there at CNN, the Tea Party is not, like the reptile house at the zoo, this tiny group of people. It is people who are concerned about $17 trillion in debt, $90 trillion in unfunded liabilities. This president has added enormously to this, so it's kind of ironic that he's talking about paying our bills and the debt and so forth when he's accumulated so much of it.
Well, without question, there's a lot of people who are concerned about the debt, and the Tea Party caucus and Tea Party patriots, the groups throughout the country.
So what's he going to do about it?
Well, here's my question, why is President Obama the only one responsible for the deficit if Congress is not able, both the House and the Senate, to pass a budget that starts to bring the United States within its means?
That's an excellent point, and you're exactly right, which is the reason I wrote this book. But he talked today about the budget. The person who's stopping the passage of an annual budget is Harry Reid. Harry Reid's working with the White House. The House, as I understand it, keeps passing budgets, sending them to the Senate, and they die. So I don't know what he's talking. We need to have a budget every year? Okay, then tell your friend Harry to get a budget. You do control the Senate. You do control the White House. There are still some Democrats left in the House, and there's some French Republicans left in the House who will go along with you.
I wanted to ask you that. What exactly is a French Republican?
A French Republican is a Republican who beats up on conservatives and is constantly praising the Democrats and contributing to the massive spending in this country while they go home and pretend otherwise.
Okay. Why French? Just because of Vichy France, or is there...
I could have said worse. Yeah, exactly. I could have said worse, but French seemed fine to me.
So let me just ask you a question about not so much the government shutdown, which might happen come midnight Monday as Monday becomes Tuesday, but
Jay, can I ask you something?
Sure.
Can I ask you something? What happens when the government shuts down? What happens?
What happens when the government shuts down? Various government agencies tell non-essential personnel, it's a specific label.
And I was in the Reagan administration when we shut down the government. I think it was 6 times.
Yes.
And essential personnel make up like 40 or 50% of the personnel in the bureaucracy. So I just want people who watch CNN to understand it's not like Saturday and Sunday when the government really shuts down and there's nobody in the offices, or a government-paid holiday when nobody's in the offices. There's actually people in the offices. The military doesn't go home. The Border Patrol doesn't go home. The ships don't go into dock. I just want them to understand the Social Security checks are still cut. We're talking about the rest of the government.
As you know, we pay the bills that have already been incurred. This is the spending that has already taken place, that the House, the Senate, President Obama have already allowed to happen. And not raising the debt ceiling, as you know, can cause serious harm to the American economy for a number of reasons. Why is it fair for the Republicans, the House Republicans, to use the debt ceiling? I'm going to try to avoid using any of the metaphors that offend people, but why is it fair to use that as a bargaining chip when it's not their economy, it is all of our economy, it is the United States economy?
Because we live in what's called a constitutional republic, and it's interesting, under Article 1, spending, taxing, borrowing has to come from the House of Representatives first. Maybe the president doesn't understand that. So if he's really concerned about a government shutdown, he's really concerned about the debt, he would have spent the last 5 years trying to figure out how to work with Republicans, but he doesn't. And so we have, for instance, Obamacare. And what does he do? He decides who gets waivers. He decides who benefits. He decides what he's going to extend and not extend. That's not the way our republic works. So he should pretend, I guess, that John Boehner's the president of Iran, maybe get a phone call, maybe they could tweet each other, and maybe have a discussion about the constitutional responsibilities of both. But Obama, when it comes to domestic policies, it's his way or the highway. When it comes to foreign policy, he's quite the appeaser.
As you know, President Obama argues, and this is me relaying his view, that he wants to negotiate with the Republicans in Congress, but they refuse to talk about tax increases, which he wants to be on the table, along with other things such as entitlement reforms and spending cuts. And he says because they're not willing to negotiate, they're the ones who are saying my way or the highway. Your response to that?
Okay, great. My response to this whole federal system is completely out of control. The trajectory is one way. When you have a nation that has $90 trillion in unfunded liabilities and not enough money in the planet to pay for that, and you have $17 trillion debt, and the executive branch is not serious about talking about it, the Senate is obstructing whatever the House does, and even the House isn't serious about it. Both political parties, to one extent or another, are involved in this. The problem is we, the American people, have to deal with this. We have the General Accountability Office, part of the federal government, that says this is unsustainable. We have the Congressional Budget Office that says this is unsustainable. We have the trustees and actuaries for Social Security and Medicare saying this is unsustainable. And these guys are fighting over, well, I'm not going to talk to this one about whether we keep the government open or not. Let me tell you something. At some point, in some day, in some way, these people are saying it's unsustainable. It is unsustainable. And it's going to crash one day, some way.
You have a book here, The Liberty Amendments, which obviously you're here to talk about. You propose 11 new amendments to the Constitution, which would be done on the state level. We don't have the time, obviously, to go through each one. But I do think one of the ones that I wanted to ask you about has to do with term limits. You propose no more than, I believe it's 12 years aggregate. Is that right? For members of Congress?
12 years for members of Congress, aggregate, one house or the other, or both. And it's not only that. What I'm proposing is under Article 5 of the Constitution. Listen, I know when I talk about the Constitution, it's very quaint, sort of, but, you know, these guys, they swear to uphold it. And so from time to time, we ought to refer them to it. And under Article 5, there's two ways of amending the Constitution, through Congress or through the state legislatures. And the framers at the time said in 1787, someday your Congress may become oppressive. Someday your federal government may become oppressive. There has to be a way for the American people to react to this, respond to this in a constitutional, legitimate, and civil way, and that's through the state legislatures proposing amendments to all the states, and just like if the Congress proposes them, 3/4 of the states would ratify. The problem right now is we have a centralized government, concentration of power, unmoored from the Constitution. That's why they get into these fights. You know what they're fighting over, Jake? They're fighting over power. Who's going to be imposing their will on the American people? That's not the way it's supposed to work. The system is broken. The constitutional construct is broken. And what I suggest in the Liberty Amendments is we have to restore the Republic by breathing life back into the Constitution.
One just quick thing, sir, and that is, I just want to ask you quickly, the one most cogent argument I've heard against term limits for members of Congress, and you do also propose them for the Supreme Court as well, but for members of Congress, the strongest argument I've heard is against them is all that would do would be to empower anonymous staffers and anonymous lobbyists who would then truly have even more power in this town. Are you not concerned about that at all?
I am concerned about that, and I'm not the font of all knowledge. I've proposed 11 reform amendments, and if, God willing, we do get to this convention of the states to propose amendments to the rest of the states, this is something that really ought to be taken up as well. We have a permanent ruling class. They go in one direction. You could see it in the debate with the attacks on Ted Cruz. It's not just the Democrats, it's the Republicans too. It's not just Obama, it was Bush before him too. Massive debts. I mean, the president says, I have cut the deficits greater in 60 years since World War II, he said today. He starts at $1.4 trillion and he gets it down to $700 billion. $700 billion yearly deficit. That's the biggest deficit that has ever existed prior to the Obama presidency, and he's bragging about it. That $700 billion is added to the $17 trillion in overall fiscal operating debt.
Mark Levin, the book is The Liberty Amendments. Very successful, popular conservative talk radio host. Thanks so much for coming on. We hope you'll come on again.
I will. God bless, Jake.
Thanks. You as well.